1,000 years ago. They're denying truth. All of philosophy begins with this one pursuit, which is, what is truth? How do you come to truth? And it's no surprise that today we're so floored that we can't find meaning and purpose and reason for life. And we find this such an incredibly high level of narcissism. We find such incredibly high levels of mental health disorders. People who everyone senses that something is wrong. Everyone knows something is wrong. We all feel it in our bones. And yet, when we come along and we try talking about it, we're not supposed to. We have people today who tell us you can't say certain words, you can't say certain phrases. It's all from this idea that we're not supposed to talk about things, we're not supposed to communicate. You disagree with someone, don't talk to them. Well, isn't that what cults do? You're going to join a cult, isn't that exactly what a cult does? Don't talk to your family, don't talk to your friends. You know what, you need to leave them and come with us. And it's funny, we'll watch documentaries on Netflix about cults, and we'll go, oh my God, how could they have been so stupid to go along with it? Meanwhile, we're posting, if you don't agree with me about X, Y, and Z issue online, then unfriend me now. We don't even see that it's the same thing, because it's different, because it's me. I got my first professorship. I guess it wasn't really a professorship. It was actually a lectureship when I was 21 years old or so, and I was appointed as a guest lecturer in applied ethics. Applied ethics means you have morals, you have ethics. Now, how do you apply them to real life? Because sometimes you find that you have a moral standard that you can't maintain because of situations in life, or at least it's difficult to maintain, let's say. So the question is, how do you apply ethics in a meaningful way? And I asked that question usually pretty early on in my ethics classes. What's wrong with murder? What's wrong with stealing? What's wrong with lying? And this is where I start to become old man Scanlon, because I remember when I was 21 and sitting in front of a room full of students, and granted it was at a college, so it's different, but man, there was discussion about how to answer that question. In other words, people had ideas of how to answer that question. Fair enough. I've been here 18 years, and I can say that that question would generate discussion, and people had ideas about how to explain why it is that murder would be wrong. And I can genuinely say that in the last 4 or 5 years or so, 5 years I guess, it seems to be growingly difficult for students either unwilling to answer that question or unable to answer that question about why murder would be wrong. We say it right off the bat, oh, murder's wrong, why? And then we usually define it afterwards, because you're killing someone. Okay, great, what's wrong with killing someone? Is there a difference between killing and murder? And we'll say sometimes, well, I guess I hear it more now, oh, so much thinking. Does it matter? Of course it matters. If there's nothing that we found out from last week, I feel like we should have learned that something like that matters. We see people celebrating the death of somebody who shared ideas. We see people who are angry at people for celebrating sharing of ideas. Was it a murder? Was it a killing? And then we say, it's so much thinking. I don't know what else could get us thinking about that stuff except watching it happen. Yeah. But it starts with that first part. In other words, we're suggesting, therefore, that it's relative. In other words, whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing that a person is murdered depends on how I feel about them. So, for example, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Do we look at that and say, good, because he had a view that was different from society's. So therefore, was it okay to murder him? Malcolm X, he was murdered. And we hope you notice the dates of his life and death. He didn't die at 40 years old because of a bad heart condition. He didn't die of diabetes at 40 years old. He was assassinated. He was assassinated by the people who he used to lead. And why did they kill him? Because he changed organizations. because he was a Nation of Islam member, and he converted out of Nation of Islam to Sunni Islam after doing a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And he comes back and he says, because one thing that Malcolm X hated Whitey. Malcolm X hated him some white people, man. I mean, he quite advertently, called for violent resistance. And then he gets kicked out of this organization because he finds out that the guy who runs it, a guy named Elijah Muhammad, is a hypocritical piece of garbage. Quite objectively. He discovers that this guy's having kids all over the place, out of wedlock. He's essentially having a bunch of affairs with his interns and his receptionists. He's got all these illegitimate kids all over the place. He goes and he talks to the women to find out for himself. And he has time for that because he's the national spokesperson for the Nation of Islam. And after Kennedy is assassinated, he makes a comment to the effect of, they asked him if he feels bad about Kennedy dying, and he said, I'm an old farm boy, and every year the chickens would come home to roost. I have a hard time feeling bad when chickens come home to roost. Now, he wasn't saying Kennedy deserved to die. What he was saying was that there was the society that we were in was beginning to glorify violence. And what happens when you glorify violence? Well, you get violence, duh. And this was his point, that we were creating this cultural violence. So we were very unpopular comment for him to make, so he got put on suspension, I guess, Nation of Islam. He goes on to Mecca. And while he's over in Mecca, which is a holy land for Muslims, he encounters people from all over the world. African Muslims, European Muslims, Asian Muslims, American Muslims, Indian Muslims, all over the place. And he just says, maybe I was wrong about this whole racism thing. And he comes back to the United States a completely changed person. Leaves Nation of Islam, essentially says, because Nation of Islam teaches that, and this is actually what they really do teach, that the original human beings were black, and that white people were created in a lab by an evil scientist who was trying to create an earthbound demon. So they believe that all white people were actually earthbound demons, and that they needed to be wiped out. They actually teach that. And so that and some alien stuff, long story. But anyway, so he leaves them, he starts his own organization, and he starts to preach unity and tolerance and religious peace. And for that, he gets shot and killed. Why? He's trying to change the world. I don't know if in this class we talked about that. What happens if you try to change the world? What happened to Malcolm X? Tried changing the world. What happened to him? What did I just tell you? He got shot. Martin Luther King Jr. Unity, peace, bringing people together. Anti-war. And by anti-war, what I mean is anti-violence. What happens to him? He got shot. Gandhi preaches peace, unity, resists violence. What happens to Gandhi? He got shot. John Lennon takes a break from his busy woman-beating schedule to write the song Imagine. And he's talking about peace through music. What happens to him? He gets shot. JFK decides to disband the CIA so that the rest of the world, so that the rest of the world can live in a place where they don't have to worry about essentially foreign governments overthrowing them all the time. So he disbands the CIA because he thinks that what the CIA is doing is evil. What happens to JFK? He got shot. Time after time after time throughout history. What happens to people when they decide that they want to change the world? Yitzhak Rabin decides that he wants to try to bring peace in Israel with his Arab country. What happens? Take a guess. I said Yitzhak Rabin, who is a Israeli essentially prime minister, president. What happens to him when he decides that he wants to negotiate with Arab enemies to try to bring peace in the Middle East? Got shot. Yeah. Hey, speaking of that, Anwar Sadat, president of Egypt, signs the first peace agreement between Israel and an Arab country. And what happens to him? Take a guess. He got shot. They came back from the negotiations, and they're so happy. They said, "We're gonna have a parade for you, bro. You should wear something bright and sit up front." So he attends the parade, and at that parade he gets shot. Time after time after time, you find that anybody who just wants to stop violence seems to find a violent end. Isn't that strange? I mean, Malcolm X, JFK, well, I guess not Jesus, right? Jesus didn't get shot. Yeah, crucified. And that's one of those things that always trips me out about that. Whether you're religious or not, whether you're Christian, atheist, Muslim, whatever, everybody seems to look at Jesus and say, across all cultures, pretty decent guy. Whatever you think about religions or whatever, you look at Jesus and go, pretty good message, generally. And yet when this guy is born, he's born in a manger outside of Bethlehem. There's no room for him in the city to be born. As he grows up, he goes to his family. There's no room for him in his family. His own family ostracizes him. As he grows older, he goes to the temple. There's no room for him in the temple. He's thrown out of the temple. Even when the guy dies and is buried, there's no room to bury him inside the city. He has to be buried outside the city. This is a dude who, for how much we revere him today, lived his whole life on the outside. He was never accepted in his time. And his ultimate end is that he gets murdered. And it strikes me as a strange thing that the world could not get along with the holiest man who ever lived. And yet somehow it gets along spectacularly well with you and me. And that means something, man. Does that mean that we're compromised? Does that mean that the pictures of these people who we put on our walls, JFK, Malcolm X, Gandhi, Sadat, the people who we quote, that we don't actually mean what they say? That we don't actually admire them? Because if the world hates them, it seems like it's a strange thing that it loves us, and it's also a strange thing that if we admire them so much and want to live like them, that we're so easily accepted by the world, and we pursue the acceptance of the world. I don't know. It strikes me as a strange thing again, man. I don't know, we can kind of think for ourselves, does that mean that we're really compromised, that we don't really live up to the ideals of the people who we say we admire? You got your hand up. Again.
I was going to say about
The Romans, crucifixion is a Roman execution. He wasn't crucified by the Jews. The Jews brought charges and said, this dude's blaspheming. And then he goes before the governor, and the governor asks him about it. And he asks him, are you a king? And Jesus says, so say you. I never claim, I'm not, you say it, not me. And then he asks him about, and Jesus essentially just points him towards the truth. And tell me if this sounds familiar. The Roman governor at the time asks him disdainfully, shaking his head, what is truth? He's denying truth. 2,000 years ago, they're denying truth. All of philosophy begins with this one pursuit, which is, what is truth? How do you come to truth? And it's no surprise that today we're so floored that we can't find meaning and purpose and reason for life. And we find this such an incredibly high level of narcissism. We find such incredibly high levels of mental health disorders. People who everyone senses that something is wrong. Everyone knows something is wrong. We all feel it in our bones. And yet, when we come along and we try talking about it, we're not supposed to. We have people today who tell us you can't say certain words, you can't say certain phrases. But now we all seem to understand that something is wrong, and yet we're also at the same time being told we can't talk about certain things, we can't say things in certain ways. I have red flags on my desk that students give because I give out red flags if I find a red flag in you. Yeah, and those things change every year because we're not supposed to say certain, you're not allowed to say certain. And I just think who decides that? But here's a better question: why do you let people tell you what you can and can't say? What are you afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid of being canceled. I'm afraid of being ostracized. I'm afraid of. Well, of course we would be, because if we don't have values, if we don't have principles, if I'd ask you, what do you stand for? What do you really stand for? And notice how so many of us can't even say that we stand against murder. And we'll say things like, well, it depends. Really? How can it possibly depend? Because we lack at the very base of that, when I ask that question, why is murder wrong? so many of us don't bother getting to the it at the very bottom of all of that. What is the it that drives it such that it's wrong? Categorically. You're going to say, well, what about self-defense? Self-defense isn't murder. Self-defense is killing. Killing is to take someone's life with proper cause. With proper cause. Murder is to take a life without proper cause. So then what's wrong with taking a life without proper cause? We can quibble about what proper cause is. If we're allowed to talk about that, then I suppose we can do that. But again, I mean, you let people tell you what to say, you let people tell you what you can talk about, then that limits your ability to think and to understand and to come to your own conclusions. It's weird how we say, well, I mean, everyone's morality is up to them. We all get to decide for ourselves. Well, how can you possibly decide for yourself if you don't talk about it, if you don't test ideas against other people? The very things that you're not supposed to talk about are the very things that drive your life, that make life interesting and ultimately valuable, meaning, purpose. How can you have these things unless you know what's important to you? How can you know what's important to you unless you talk about it, unless you think about it? Because the things that you're allowed to talk about will limit the things that you allow yourself to think about. How oftentimes we say, I need you to stop thinking about this because I can't do anything about it anyway. I can't do anything, so I need to stop talking about it. That limits our ability to think and to understand. If truth doesn't matter, then we can't really talk about anything. If we can't talk about anything, we can't come to meaning and purpose. And if you can't come to those things, we have an overarching nihilism that nothing matters. And how many of us feel that way, that nothing matters? You know? And so what's funny is I'll say all this and people will assume, oh, you must think X, Y, and Z. The only thing I can promise you that I won't kind of conceal from you what I think is that I think that thinking is important. And it's important to come to conclusions. It's important to have dialogue and discussion. What's funny is I had so many people reach out to me and say, Professor, you know, one person specifically, Professor, I don't know if you remember me, I had you 10 years ago over at the college in the philosophy class, 10 years ago. And he said, I remember you talking back then and about what was going to be happening in the coming decade. And he said, everything that you pointed out is coming true. And it's funny, I have no recollection of talking about those things, but this one dude from 10 years ago internalized it and said, holy crap. And he said, I realized it's all from this idea that we're not supposed to talk about things. We're not supposed to communicate. You disagree with someone, don't talk to them. Well, isn't that what cults do? I mean, you're going to join a cult, isn't that exactly what a cult does? Don't talk to your family, don't talk to your friends. You know what, you need to leave them and come with us. And it's funny, we'll watch documentaries on Netflix about cults, and we'll go, oh my God, how could they have been so stupid to go along with it? Meanwhile, we're posting, if you don't agree with me about X, Y, and Z issue online, then unfriend me now. We don't even see that it's the same thing, because it's different, because it's me. I'm a critical thinker. Man, we have to check ourselves, man, because otherwise we end up not knowing what to think about things, and we can't even say things like murder is wrong. And then we start denying that such a thing as truth exists, but that's not a new thing. That's the advent of that's the advent of every decayed society in the history of the world. We like to look at this thing from Malcolm X and say, you're not so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality. Wrong is wrong, no matter who does it, says it. That's right. I'm not going to support my country if it's wrong. Why not? You support your friends when they're wrong. You support political ideologies when they're wrong. You support your family when they're wrong. Somehow we feel like we're brave if we stand up and say, but not my country. Or not this fact, we'll say something really stupid like, this is not even my country. You're here, right? You know, especially you're in school, right? You're getting free lunches and stuff from it, right? You're getting roads and police protection, fire protection, you're getting a lot of stuff from it, right? Yes, but it's unfair. We scratch our chins like we've said something deep and meaningful. Name anywhere that's not. Say, by the way, just remember if you aren't still doing it, at some point in your life you complain that your family wasn't fair. You stomped your foot and said, it's not fair. It is. And of course, then some asshole like me comes along and asks you, what is fair? Oh, never mind, it's too much thinking. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Loyalty to people, loyalty to truth, loyalty to ideas. I don't know. I find that the people who talk loyalty the most are usually the least loyal. It's like people talk about respect the most, are typically the least respectful people I've ever met. It's kind of like when someone says, remember guys, we're all family. God, that scares me. I'm in meetings sometimes in the teacher meeting, they'll say, all right guys, so remember, we're all family. I'm like, oh man, I'm about to get screwed, aren't I? You guys are about to screw me over, aren't you? Because that's what family does. And I never trust what they say. But yeah, loyalty is kind of like that, where we say, well, we begin by saying that we're loyal. Now, why would the guy have cheated? It's because she wasn't paying attention. It's because. You always know that the person's wrong when they begin sentences with, well, it's because, or, well, it's because, oh, it's different. No, that's the problem, is we start thinking it's different. You're either a loyal person or you're not. You're either an honest person or you're not. You're either a respectful person or you're not. And if you think, well, I'm respectful to people who give me respect, well, then you're not a respectful person. You're an opportunist, and you do what you think you need to do in order to get favor from people. And your pride gets in the way, and that's who you are. You're not a respectful person. You're a prideful person. And what good ever comes from pride? Pride is what stops you from telling people how you really feel about them. Pride is what stops you from telling the truth because you're afraid of the consequences. Pride is what stops you from apologizing when you're wrong, and pride stops you from seeing that you're wrong in the first place. Nothing good comes from pride, man. So, if we can justify it there, we can justify it anywhere. You're either a loyal person or you're not. You're an honest person or you're not. And by the way, me saying things like this is the stuff that pisses people off. I was talking with a class last week, and it was my 6th grade class actually. I asked this question because somebody made a comment about me being a controversial figure on campus. And it's not the first time I've been called this. And I've asked the question, what's so controversial about me? What do I say to you? Work hard, good things happen. I believe in you. I want you to believe in yourself. Commit yourself to something. Become great at it. Find a meaning and a purpose in life. Yes, there's suffering in life, but there's so much more. You can find things that help you to transcend that suffering. Be an upright moral character. Live by values. Become someone that someday you're worthy of being admired, because someone will admire you. What in any of that is controversial? Well, it's because, I get it, I say shit. And that's what I mean. I say the word shit. And so because I say the word shit, oh, sure you can't. This guy's so controversial. It's because he tells jokes. It's cause. No, I understand why I'm controversial, because I tell you the truth. As best as I possibly can. I mean, I'm right about everything. I could be wrong about everything. But at the very least, I'm doing the best I can with regards to truth. And so you understand why. What happens when you tell the truth? Why is there a red dot on my chest? You get shot. Yeah, exactly. Huh, Skelly, did you? We're all thinking, I need to say, we're already thinking it. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?